Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is EmmaAbe Books, and today we are going to be doing the wrap-up for December 2019. Also, Happy New Year! I'm filming this on New Year's Day. I just want to mention, new setup, I got a new bookshelf. I have too many books, so I got a new bookshelf, so that's why the setup is different. This month, I read 10 books. I read one book in the first 2 weeks of December because finals and final studying, those things are very important. So I only read one book in that first 2 weeks, and then the other 9 I read after. I fulfilled my goal of reading one book without an audiobook. Usual disclaimer, I cannot pronounce things. I'm going to be mispronouncing things. I'm sorry. It is unavoidable. Please do not take offense. Alright, let's get started with the books. The first book is American Predator, The Hunt for the Most Malicious Serial Killer of the 21st Century by Maureen Callahan. And that was a really interesting book. It was the only book I read during my finals experience. I actually read it during finals week. If you look on my finals vlog, you can see kind of my preliminary thoughts about it. I read this with an audiobook. I liked it. It's been a while since I read it. I've kind of been left with this one real lingering question, is why did he confess so much so quickly? I don't want to spoil anything, but they caught the guy, and then to me it felt like the next day he admitted to doing what he did and then just started admitting all this other stuff. I think was really cool was they included crimes that are unsolved that they think could have been done by this person, but it'll just be really hard, / there's no real way to prove it. That was cool. I read American Predator in one day after I finished one of my finals. Oh, it's gross. It's not that it's gross, it's just that the serial killer is gross, because serial killers are gross in my opinion. There's not really much else to say about it other than it is like the standard true crime story. I think it's crazy that we didn't know anything, or at least I didn't know anything about this serial killer because he was so prolific. I don't really know why I decided to read it. I think it was checked out to me at the library because I just put a bunch of stuff on hold and it was checked out to me at the time, and I was like, well, all the other books that I have checked out right now are about sexual harassment, and I was like, I'm not ready for that right now. I think it was a solid 4 out of 5. On Goodreads. Yes, I know I need to update my Goodreads. I haven't done that since before November. Eek. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just busy. The next book I read was Nobody's Victims: Fighting Psycho Stalkers, Pervs, and Trolls by Carrie Goldberg. I loved this book. I did not think I would. I remember recommending it, I think like in September, to the Cincinnati Public Library System, and then it came and I read it, and I was so happy I read it. It is... I read this with audiobook, not following along because I didn't have the actual hard copy. It's all about this lawyer. She decides that she is going to be a lawyer for people who are victims of like cyber stalking and revenge porn. All of this stuff that is not good and that happens when you have really manipulative partners. For example, there's this couple with partner A and partner B, and it didn't end well. So partner A was the same person, and then partner B was perv, stalker, crazy partner. Partner B was impersonating partner A on this Tinder profile and saying that partner A was willing to do all of this sort of sexual stuff that partner A wasn't really willing to do, and that if partner A said no, then that was just a part of the whole fantasy thing. So it got pretty dangerous because all of these potential sexual partners were showing up to partner A's house and stalking him and starting like screaming, and it just got dangerous. What Carrie Goldberg, the lawyer, she tries to protect people like partner A from people like partner B. I think it's really cool. I was reading it and I was like, yes, I love that we're recognizing these toxic behaviors and we're fighting this the way that we should be fighting it, because it's not okay for anyone to be treated like that, for anyone to be doxxed online or be hated on or thrown disgusting hate online, and all of this really bad predatory behavior and abusive behavior that can happen between two partners that can follow the victim a lot. And there's not a lot of laws set in place to protect victims of these crimes, and I just loved hearing what lawyer was doing, what the author was doing to protect vulnerable people. I really liked it. I think that lots of people should read this. It's one of the things that the author does. She's like, this is what the toxic behavior is that you should be looking for. And I'm like, thank you for doing that, because that can help me in my dating life. It's crazy. It was a really good book. I really recommend it. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 stars. I really felt like I wanted to do something. This book I read is A Beautiful Mind, The Life of Mathematical Genius and Nobel Laureate John Nash by Sylvia Nassar. I picked this up because of like the mental health rep in it. John Nash had schizophrenia, which isn't advertised like on here. I would like to be able to read like the Black Bird and know that he was dealing with schizophrenia. I cannot imagine what it must have been like. I don't want to spoil anything, even though this is a nonfiction book. It's just crazy from from being one of the top people in your field to being constantly put in a mental institution because you're having all of these breaks. The author talks a lot about the math in it, which I kind of got lost in some of it. I like math. I think I'm relatively good at math. I don't tend to read a lot of books about math, and I wasn't really here to learn about his specific math equations. We did use some of them in one of my classes, in my discrete structures class, so that was kind of cool to learn some of the history behind some of those math equations and those math proofs. And it's not a lot of the book, but she does spend time like explaining some of his math equations. So if that's not something you're really interested in, just know that that is going to be something you're going to have going into this. It's like a 4 out of 5. What I also think is really cool about this book is that the author includes actual quotes from other people in his life. It wasn't my favorite book, but it was interesting. It's longer than you would expect. I read this with following along and audiobook. It's really interesting to see like his rise and then his fall. Towards the latter end of his life, he starts blabbering about like aliens. He takes it just as seriously as he takes his math proofs, which to most people would seem kind of crazy, but to him seemed very rational because these visions about like aliens and other things came from the same place as the math proofs did. So he thought they were just equally as real. Interesting dude. Book, okay, 4 out of 5. The next book I read was Hungry, Eating, Road Tripping, and Risking It All with the Greatest Chef in the World by Jeff Gordinger. Yeah, this is a little bit of a different book. It's kind of like a memoir-ish of like this food critic gallivanting around the world, setting up all of these pop-up shops of this really famous chef. I like how they eat. He just talked about food. At the same time, I wasn't really invested in a lot of it. I think if you're more into like the whole food scene, I'm not. You guys have seen in my past videos, I literally feed myself rice and like frozen fish and vegetables on practically daily basis. I'm not a big food connoisseur. I like food. I'm not that talented of a chef. What was really cool was to see how like just the food was described and the challenges that can come with creating a restaurant. One of the big places in Mexico. It was really cool. It's kind of like a love letter to all of these different cuisines. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I give 4 out of 5s a lot. I don't think it was quite the book for me, but I still enjoyed it. I'm glad I gave it a shot and I read it. It's shorter than you would think. And also, like, I feel like you can't find it anywhere. When you look up Hungry, it's all of these other, like, books about eating disorders. And I'm just like, I don't want to read about an eating disorder right now. It's a love letter to food. I read this with audiobook, no actual physical book, because I don't actually have the physical book, and I didn't want to walk in the Chicago cold to the library and find it because it's cold. It wasn't for a while, but right now it's cold. The next book I read is Savage Appetites: 4 True Stories of Women, Crime, and Obsession by Rachel Monroe. This is really interesting. I like the 4 different perspectives that it took. I've heard good things about this on BookTube, and I enjoyed it. I really did. 4 out of 5. Solid 4 out of 5. I don't understand identifying with the killer, the whole last section. I just personally don't understand it. Killers, rapists, I've said it before in one of my other videos, they're not cute. I don't get it. But I will say it was really fascinating to see this author do a deep dive into the minds and forums online of people who do identify with the killer. That was really interesting to me. My brothers are home. They're something. I don't know. I read this just with an audiobook because I do not have the actual hard copy personally, and I think that the author does a really good job of showcasing. I think the author really does a good job of approaching things as much as she can without bias, that the author does a really good job of showcasing it. I know I'm talking a lot about the killer part of it, but that was the part that was most interesting to me because it's the part that I just don't understand. I really like this book. If you are at all kind of curious about like true crime, but are kind of tired of all of these books about like true crime, like it's kind of like the same formula over and over again, you want a little bit of something different, I'd say check this book out, Savage Appetites. It's really good. I enjoyed it. The next book I read was The Pretty One on Life, Pulp Culture, Disability, and Other Reasons to Fall in Love with Me by Kia Brown. I really liked this book. I read this with audio only. I didn't have an actual physical copy. That is a trend this month. It was a really solid 4 out of 5. This was a book on the recommendations for the Disability Readathon, and I didn't read it then, but I'm glad I gave it a chance because it was such a fun, interesting romp. I think Kia has a really fun personality, and the book really rides on her personality and how fun she is. All of the pop culture references that she makes, those are really fun. Some of them I got, some of them I didn't. It was really fun to read about her from her perspective, and she narrated the audiobook too, so that was really fun too. I like that she chose to go with essays. I don't know all of the events in her life, but I think it lends itself more to a series of vignettes than an actual narrative story. The first one she did, which was like an ode to the chairs in her life, which chairs are very important for her to function. The way that she talked about the chairs and personified them, and it was really creative. I liked that. She is very honest about things that have happened in her life and how she has treated some people badly, like her family, and she's apologizing and not expecting to get anything in return. She's just like putting it on the table and being like, yeah, I fucked up, I did this bad thing, can we try and mend this? And she realizes that she will never repair what could have been, but she can try and make things better, which I think is a very healthy way to look at familial relationships. Yeah, she also has a really good section on grief. I've mentioned before in one of my videos that death is kind of a triggering thing for me, especially when it comes to depictions of grief. And there's a very honest depiction of grief in this, and that was really difficult to read, but it was also, she really like focuses on how grief can destroy people, as it really can. She also talks about how time limits for grief are really not okay. And yeah, I 10,000% agree with that. I hate it when I get comments like, but that happened X amount of years ago. Like, why are we still honoring something that happened X amount of years ago? I'm just like, because it still has really profound impact on the people who were involved. Pro tip to all of my viewers out there, please do not put time limits on people's grief. It is a really shitty thing to do. It was a really good book. It was really fun. It was a really great way for her to put herself into a book, and I really hope she is able to achieve all of the things that she wants to achieve in this book. Go read it. The next book I read this month is the book that I read without an audiobook. I laugh at it because it's the Doctor Who Cult of Skaro. I was reading this while I was filming my last week's video because I was having issues with my camera and it was cutting out and not recording bits, and so I'd have to re-record things over and over. What is something I have right by me? And this was something I had right by me, and so I decided to read it. I didn't hate it, but I also was like, what's the point to this book? Basically, it talks about like the Cult of Skaro episode in Doctor Who, and while I do like the episode 2-parter, I felt like there was no new information added that you couldn't have gotten from that episode. This is very much definitely targeted for children. There's these fun quizzes in it. Test your knowledge bit. I don't think it was necessary. I thought it was gonna add to the lore of Doctor Who and this Cult of Skaro, and it really doesn't. It just regurgitates the episode, but in like textbook form. The one redeeming bit of it is like this little book section in the back that talks about like the birth of the Cult of Skaro. That was interesting, but it's only like this long. I think I'm gonna give this like a 3 out of 5 because I could see a market for this. I could see young kids wanting to have this, and I did like that section in the back. It's just like, why does this exist? Got 3 more books. The next book I read is She Said, Breaking the Sexual Harassment Story That Helped Ignite a Movement Comment by Jody Cantor and Megan Towie. Oh my god, I really like this book. It kind of made me feel two things. It made me feel really empowered because we were able to band together as a society to kick these really gross, typically men, out of their seats of power, raise up these victims and protect the victims. But it also felt really disheartening because it took so freaking long. This stuff has been happening for decades, if not centuries. And it is just now where we're recognizing and learning to value that, hey, maybe women shouldn't have to be sexually harassed all the time to get a good job at work or get a promotion. Most of the victims focused on in this book were women. It focuses mainly on the breaking of the Weinstein story, but also talks a lot about Trump and Kavanaugh. Oh my gosh, that whole ending section was really interesting. I felt like really frustrated reading this because shit, victim blaming still happens all the time. Not believing victims, not believing people. Also, what happens is just kind of like, well, there's nothing we can do, which is shitty. I hate that. I hate that happened. It also felt like a really big win because it allowed more women to come forward and say, hey, this stuff is happening to me too at this job. And it kind of cracked open this whole issue. I think this book easily gets a 4.5 out of 5. I can't decide between a 4 or 5 at this moment. It was really interesting to see how difficult it was, the reporting process to get this story broken. And I'm glad I read it, and I hope that more people read it, because it's an important story. Really, read it, read it, read it. It was so good. She said also made me feel like I wanted to do something. You know what? I think I've just said it. I think I'm going to give this book a 5 out of 5. I love when books give me that feeling of like, do this, like you should go out and do something. I also read She Said with audiobook. I've read for the very first time Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. First time I ever read this. We didn't have to read it in high school or anything. I want to do a whole book review on this, but I just haven't yet because I read this like 2 days ago. I have a lot of feelings about this. I really liked it, but I also had some major issues with it, and part of some of those issues are connected with the times that it was written that I don't really want to get too much into this because I want to save it for the review. Don't really know what to rate this because the issues I have with it are kind of big in my opinion, but this book was so gosh darn influential, and you can see how it was so influential and why so many people read it and loved it, and I think that is really interesting. Also, I will say about the last chapter, at least in the edition I have, it's kind of like the summary to the key to Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is all of her sources. It's a very, very quick, like, this is taken from this is taken from that, which I thought was really interesting. So if you don't want to read the whole key to Uncle Tom's Cabin, you can just like kind of read the ending to Uncle Tom's Cabin. I read this with audiobook and following along. Just so much to say about it. I don't really want to talk a lot about it because I want to save it for my review. I have no idea when it's going to come out, but I want to specifically like pull quotes and all of that good stuff and make a full good, review. I'd say read it for the historical context. If you guys read it, maybe comment down below what you think some of my issues with it are and what you think I liked about it. The very last book I read in December was I'm Telling the Truth But I'm Lying by Bessie P. This was a very interesting one. It was written as if everything that was happening to her was addressed as if it was you. It's a collection of essays about Bessie's life, and again, I really like this essay style memoir thing. Went a lot into her diagnosis as bipolar, which I can imagine is just crazy, and lots about her life immigrating and family and feelings of insecurity, and I think this book a lot of people can connect to, or at least connect to parts of it. I know I did. I know I personally struggle with sleeping, as you can kind of gather by when some of my videos were filmed. Some parts were more intense than others. I think I'm gonna rate this a 4 out of 5. I had a lot of questions about like what's really happening right now. I'm kind of confused about this. I'd say if you're curious, go read it. I went into this book completely blind. I didn't know anything about it other than the title. The reason I read it was because I had like 4 books that were all due in like 3 days. I knew that one of them was Salem's Lot, which I'm like, I need to read that one. So we're gonna spend one day reading something else. So I picked the shortest one, and that was this book. I don't regret picking it up. And I read this just solely with audiobook because I do not have a hard copy, as you can tell by the picture. Alright, thank you weirdos for watching this video. Yeah, so we did it. I told my parents about this. Thank you guys for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe. All of the really important stuff that you gotta do. I literally told my mom about this BookTube channel this morning at breakfast. Ah! It was fine. They reacted fine. They were just like, okay, we don't care. Have a good year. Welcome to 2020. Let me know, how was your new year? What are your plans for 2020? I'm gonna wrap it up now and stop blubbering. God, this thing is so freaking annoying. First book is Nobody's Victim, Fighting Psychos. This isn't the first book. Wow, you cannot tell that, like,